Welcome back, everybody. We're going to be continuing the discussion about the copper IUD, this time with someone who's had a very different experience than I have had, but also a bad one. Before we get into it, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe. Hit notifications if you like this content. Hi, Scarlet. Thanks for joining me here today.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
I know Scarlet because she's a close friend of mine. And so we're going to chat here today about how the IUD affected both of us in different ways. So you had the copper IUD. Tell me about it.
I had it for 6 months. I got it in September 2014, got it out in February 2015. I got it because I had an abortion and I did not want to have that experience again. My mom and my grandma both have allergic reactions to excess amounts of estrogen. And I also have that. So when I was a teenager, I was on Yasmin birth control, and it caused me to gain a lot of weight and lose feeling in my hands and my feet, and intense emotional swings. So that felt off the table. And so I pretty much just had a condoms only rule after that. And then after the abortion happened, I was looking for options that were non-hormonal, and the only one that came up was the copper IUD. Because I was in trauma space from the abortion, I just wanted to have something to ensure that that didn't happen again. I got it. Within a month, I was experiencing negative side effects, but I assumed that that might have been due to the trauma that had been incurred from that experience. It looked like increased anxiety, difficulty going to sleep. As the months progressed, it got worse, where I started having heart palpitations. I started losing my hair, anxiety for no reason, all hours of day and night, and some amount of gastrointestinal stress started happening. Ultimately, I decided to get it taken out. When I started bleeding in between periods, I was like, no, this is way beyond anything that I'm okay with, and something is very wrong. Unfortunately, all of the symptoms that I'd incurred in that period of time did not go away. And it took me about 3 years to get a proper diagnosis, going between 5 different doctors. I knew that something was wrong because, like, heart palpitations, that level of anxiety, no sleep, hair falling out, there's something wrong. But I just kept experiencing, like, getting blood panels done. Blood panels would show up normal, and doctors would say, oh, you're just anxious, you're just stressed, like, go take a bath, like, go meditate. And this is very much akin to in the past, like way back, with medical issues with women, telling women that they have a hysteria, and just kind of dropping it. And that's what it felt like. And ultimately, I went to LA to get seen by the gut health group at Cedars-Sinai. I did a breath test that measures your methane and hydrogen, and through that was diagnosed with hydrogen dominant SIBO. Like, in my overall health, the intermittent being able to sleep or not, the adrenal fatigue that comes and goes, the potential for thyroid imbalance, the continued issues with hair loss. As the dysbiosis kept going, there, like, one of the symptoms was uncontrollable weight gain, because I was, unbeknownst to me, eating foods that were creating more dysbiosis. So I gained like 30 pounds in a heartbeat, and could never make it go away, mixed with all the anxiety and all the other symptoms. It was just like, it was a mess. Oh, and then, like, the biggest that, like, required going through a heavy metal detox or the copper was brain fog.
Mm-hmm.
Just not, like, I consider myself a decently smart human being. And there were points where I just could not keep thoughts in my head.
Mm-hmm.
And it was terrifying.
Totally.
The heavy metal detox helped a lot, but it was like, this is still ongoing. Mm-hmm. I got it taken out in February 2015. We're in 2021 almost right. 2022 right now. Like,
totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, these things they last such a long time. And I'm surprised I'm still working on healing from a year and a half post removal. I'm like, come on. But yeah, hearing your story, I'm like, wow, not a good product, right?
No. And I mean, there is a space of gratitude for understanding how beautifully delicate and vulnerable this corporal experience is.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And how much, like, detailed care is required to keep it going. I think before all of this happened, there was a certain air of invincibility that I felt around myself, even if it wasn't on a conscious level, it was subconscious. So now there is like a deeper space of like humble reverence for the points where there is optimal health and the work that it takes to get there.
Totally. Being aware of like how to care for the body is such a huge skill that we don't always know, or we're not always given. We just go to the doctor and we're like, tell us everything, but we actually have to be our own advocate and go to the doctor and be like, this is what I think I know, and let's talk about it.
Yeah. And I mean, that topic of advocacy and patient advocacy and women's advocacy in these spaces, the amount of sacrifice that we go through when it comes to birth control, and the shifts that happen in our bodies and our minds from that, and the amount of dismissiveness that can exist in these spaces. Like, if nothing else from this experience and this interview that's happening, just hoping that it can help others be able to take a little bit more charge in their decision making around the types of birth control choices that they're making and the potential ramifications. Because here's the thing, and I know you experience this too, doctors will tell you it is a safe option every time. It's crazy. There's a certain level of like micro gaslighting that perpetuates through, it feels like. So
Totally.
yeah.
Yes. And I mean, I'm so shocked that doctors are still like, come back in and we'll talk about other birth control options. It's like a Band-Aid, it's a cure-all. Like, oh, you have cystic acne, let's talk about birth control. Oh, you have ovarian cysts, let's talk about birth control. And it's like, it's not the only way to get through those issues. It's a cycle if you want it to be. Yeah. So you really have to like stand up for yourself and be like, okay, well, right now I don't need that, But what birth control are you using now? Because you were telling me you use something different now, which is something helpful for you.
This year, I started a progesterone-only birth control. It's called Erin. I'm thriving with it, and that's great. But no option will work for everyone. I just feel grateful that there's something I was able to take that wasn't giving me negative side effects. So
Totally.
but that's not, that's not the case for the majority of women. There need to be more options, and not the expectation that in order to have birth control, it requires fucking up mental and physical spaces in order to do so.
Totally. Yeah, there are other options. You don't have to go through torture if something's affecting you poorly, which it probably will if it's the copper IUD.
Yes.
Yeah, without you even noticing sometimes, which is very scary. Like pushing through something when your body's like screaming at you, like your gut's like, no, don't do that. You got to listen to that. What was the experience for you when you were going doctor to doctor to doctor? And also, what is your response to how they don't identify the side effects? They just kind of like make you the problem kind of thing.
Anyone who has any type of chronic invisible illness, disease, can relate to the feeling of going to a doctor and being dismissed. And that can, and especially if it's anything that's chronic and long-term, that it can create ebbs and flows of desire to act. 2015 into 2016, I was trying to be very active in figuring out what was going on. Didn't get the right response from one doctor, so went to another, didn't get the right response. And right response, like it just kept being, oh, you're just stressed. Oh, you're just stressed. Like, we don't need to do any further testing. When you hear that enough times, you question your own sanity. It was a 3-year process. And I was living in the Bay Area, and to see a GI specialist required like a wait of multiple weeks to a month and a half. And I didn't want to wait anymore. I grew up in LA, so I called a specialist at Cedars-Sinai, and they could see me the next day. So I drove down that day. And then the next morning, started getting to work and spent about a week in LA making that happen. And got a diagnosis and got the meds and moved on. And but it's still like, I'm so much better now than I ever was for those first 3 years where I didn't know what the fuck was going on and felt like it was related to copper IUD, but couldn't get confirmation because no doctor wanted to go down that route with me. This is exciting to me because anytime I've seen friends, what do you recommend? What do you not recommend for birth control? Chiming in very quickly with like, hey, this really screwed me up. Be very careful.
Yeah. Yeah, even after my experience, I've had friends ask me, "What do you think about the copper IUD?" I'm like, obviously, I'm not into it. Yeah, it's really toxic to a lot of people. And I mean, I'm sure there's maybe a few people out there that don't have these issues, but not worth it, right? Just not worth it. And there's thousands of people in that copper IUD group, and I'm sure like tons on that Reddit thread of just people with bad experiences. It's like, it's kind of undetectable for some people too. I was swearing by it for 9 years and I had no idea that the problem was literally just like inside me the whole time. Like it's literally a heavy metal. Is there anything else you would want to share about the copper AD, your experience with it? Anything else?
What would have helped at the time was having a community of people who like had gone through this. And I feel like there's a lot of silence still around birth control and these options. The fact that most of the information that came through for me was from anonymous threads on Reddit is still pointing to some levels of shame and secrecy around women's health, around birth control, and this kind of like, a patriarchal move towards this subconscious idea that women can only help, they cannot be helped. So bottling up a lot of the experience of existing in pain as just something that shouldn't be a burden to anyone. But really, like, my hope with what we're doing is to cultivate more community and mutual support around this, so that one, people who have the copper IUD or had it and are experiencing negative side effects know that there are people that they can talk to, and building those threads of support. And two, for those who are considering the copper IUD, that this just exists as another resource to help in understanding like what potential side effects and ramifications look like, so that educated decisions can be made.
Yes, that is the whole reason I'm doing this. I'm so happy about it. Thank you so much. It's really difficult to share this like vulnerable, intimate detail stuff, but it's so important because other people need to learn from it and prevent themselves from having the same issues. Be fully aware. Knowledge is power.
Knowledge is power.
Yes.